The FBI director fired an entire team of Iran experts. Then America went to war with Iran, and when Congress put him under oath and asked him why, he said he didn't know where those agents worked. He signed the order, he removed them, and in front of the House Intelligence Committee, Kash Patel looked at a congressman and said he wasn't familiar with the jobs of the people he had just fired. This is the hearing that didn't make the front page, because what happened in that room is worse than the firing itself. Stay with this, because the answer Patel gave changes everything. On March 19, 2026, Kash Patel sat before the House Intelligence Committee. He knew how hearings worked. He had survived them before. What he didn't know was what Steve Cohen had in front of him. Cohen had one question, a single question, and it was the kind that a non-answer makes worse, not better. To understand what Cohen was holding, you need the weeks before that room. In late February 2026, Patel fired a dozen agents from the FBI's Iran unit. Their entire job was tracking Iranian operatives inside the United States, monitoring networks, identifying threats, building relationships with informants no one else could reach. He fired all of them, not for failure, not for any breach of law. Every single one of them had worked on the investigation into Trump's classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. That was the only reason. Here is why that matters more than it sounds. The FBI's Iran unit was not a desk job. These agents had spent years building what intelligence officials call human networks, confidential sources embedded inside Iranian communities in the United States, who provided advance warning of plots, operations, and threats that no surveillance camera or phone intercept could ever catch. That kind of intelligence takes a decade to build. It cannot be replaced in a week. It cannot be transferred to a new hire. When those agents were fired, those sources went dark. Not suspended, not paused. Dark. Here is where the story stops being about personnel. Days after those firings, the United States launched Operation Epic Fury, a military strike against Iran. American bombs hit Iranian nuclear sites. The country's supreme leader was killed, the region ignited, and the team responsible for tracking Iran's response inside America was already gone. A source inside the FBI told CBS News those firings were devastating, then added something that doesn't leave the room easily. You can't replicate that with new agents. These sources will go away. Not the files, not the training, the relationships, years of trust building with informants embedded inside Iranian communities in the United States. Gone the moment their handler walked out with a termination letter. Steve Cohen walked into that hearing room knowing all of this. He didn't give a speech. He started with a number. How many days before Operation Epic Fury did Patel know the strikes were coming? Patel said he would answer in a classified session. Cohen pressed. How many days? 2? 3? A month? Patel admitted it. More than a month. He had known for more than a month before the first bomb dropped. Stop. Think about what that means. Patel sat in classified briefings. He read the intelligence assessments. He knew a war with Iran was being planned, not in days, in weeks. And in that exact window, with that exact knowledge, he chose to fire the people whose only job was watching Iran. That is not a coincidence. That is a decision, and that decision had a consequence that nobody in that hearing room could undo. While Patel was terminating the FBI's Iran experts, the Iranian government was watching. Iran's intelligence services, described in a joint FBI and DHS report as adaptable and opportunistic, had already spent years recruiting operatives inside the United States. Biker gangs, drug traffickers, sleeper contacts using burner phones and cryptocurrency, all of it monitored in part by the unit Patel just gutted. Now that unit was gone. Cohen moved to the question, with that knowledge, why did you fire at least a dozen agents in the unit that specializes in Iran counterintelligence? The unit that keeps us safer from Iranian attacks on our country. The room went quiet. Patel said he was not familiar with where those agents worked. Read that again. The director of the FBI, the man who signed every termination order, not familiar with where they worked. Cohen's voice rose. You're the director. I'm not. You should know the answer. You fired the people. Where did they work? Patel said the agents were terminated for ethical violations. So Cohen asked the question that followed. Were those ethical violations about Trump's classified documents at Mar-a-Lago? Patel said he would not comment on pending litigation. That was his entire answer. Here is what that response reveals. And this is the part that never made the headlines. Patel didn't say no. He didn't deny the Mar-a-Lago connection. He reached for legal cover instead of the truth. And when a director of the FBI refuses to deny something under oath, That refusal is its own answer. The agents who spent years watching Iran's networks inside America were fired because they investigated the president before a war with more than 30 days of advance warning. Senator Dick Durbin went to the Senate floor to say it directly. Just days before the war began, Director Patel deliberately undermined the FBI's ability to counter Iranian threats, all to distract from his own failings as director. That statement is public record. Now here is what almost no one reported. When Patel fired those agents, the Department of Homeland Security quietly issued a bulletin. It warned that the military operation against Iran could inspire domestic attacks, cyber attacks, and violence on American soil. The FBI team that would have been first to respond to that bulletin was already terminated. Congresswoman Grace Meng wrote a formal letter demanding answers. Why were those agents targeted? What was the staffing level? How was the FBI protecting Americans in the middle of an active war? Patel did not appear before her. Two other congressmen sent a separate letter demanding he come explain the timing to the House Homeland Security Committee. Patel did not appear there either. He appeared before the House Intelligence Committee on March 19, 2026, and Steve Cohen had been waiting. But here is the question that still has no answer. If the agents were fired for ethical violations, why couldn't Patel name a single one in public? Why did elected officials with security clearances get told to wait for a closed session? And if Mar-a-Lago had nothing to do with it, why did Patel refuse to say so under oath? The hearing produced 3 facts, not accusations. Facts entered into the congressional record. Patel knew about the Iran strikes for more than a month before they happened. Patel fired the agents tracking Iran during that exact window. Patel told Congress under oath that he did not know where those agents worked. 3 facts. 1 hearing. No contradiction from Patel. Only silence, refusal, and pending litigation. Here is what those agents actually were. Not just monitors, not just analysts. In Trump's first term, this same unit worked to intercept Iranian assassination plots against Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and others targeted after the Soleimani strike. These are not theoretical threats. These are prosecuted federal cases. The informant networks that made those arrests possible were built over years by the exact agents Patel fired. A source told investigators those networks cannot be rebuilt. New agents cannot inherit old sources. Trust doesn't transfer with a job title. These sources will go away, the source said. They went away. By the time Cohen finished his questioning, there was no confession, no apology, no accountability in any legal sense. What there was a silence Patel had not prepared for. He had come in with answers. He had survived hearings before. He knew how to redirect and delay. But Cohen had not asked him about policy or strategy. He had asked him about 12 people Patel personally fired, and Patel had looked at a congressman and said he did not know them. That is not a classified answer. That is not a legal defense. That is a man responsible for protecting the United States claiming ignorance of a decision he made before a war he knew was coming. Think about what the FBI director's job actually is. Not the title, the job. It is to know who works for him, to know what they do, to know why they were removed and what consequences followed. That is the minimum requirement of the office. In that hearing room, under oath, Patel failed that minimum requirement, and the 12 agents whose expertise he claimed not to know had been the ones standing between the American public and a foreign government that had already plotted to kill American officials on American soil. The hearing on March 19, 2026 ended the way hearings end, without a vote, without a reversal, without consequence in any immediate sense, but it produced something harder to erase. A man who knew a war was coming, who knew which team watched the enemy, who removed that team anyway, who stood in front of Congress and reached for 4 words. I don't know. Cohen didn't need a confession. He just needed Patel to say it, in the right room, under oath, and let the record hold it forever.